Jordan with the Young Turks here with Brian Fallon, press secretary for Secretary Clinton. Obviously, last debate, good poll numbers for her coming out right now. What is the plan here? Is it kind of stay the course or be a little more aggressive as Donald Trump flies off the handle?
Well, if he comes in tonight, as we suspect he may, sort of implementing a scorched earth approach, then our policy will be our guest. We think that there's been a pretty strong reaction to that, a reaction against that from independent voters in the last 2 weeks. And they've seen him up close in these debates. They haven't liked what they've seen in terms of his lack of temperament, his divisive approach, his insults against Miss Universe after the first debate, and now attacking additional women over the last week that have come forward to talk about instances and encounters they've had with him. So in general, I think that you've seen a surge in momentum and across all the battleground states really for us since the first debate. I think that tonight her job will just be to continue to try to communicate in a positive vision, and while he continues to throw the kitchen sink at her, keep talking about the issues that voters care most about. We want to close the campaign on a high note and really have a closing argument that is fundamentally positive.
And in terms of the leaks, I know you guys for a while now have been talking about Russia. A lot of people are confused. What's the evidence that this is Russia, other than government officials saying so?
Oh, I mean, there was an extensive investigation conducted by CrowdStrike, which is the independent firm that is headed by the FBI's top cyber terrorism official who left the FBI, started a private firm, and was retained by the DNC to investigate the incident. And so it was the conclusion of CrowdStrike that was the case with respect to the DNC, and then that finding was affirmed by the government in the statement that they issued a couple weeks ago, which was rather unprecedented for them to make the decision to call out the Russians so explicitly. And I think that the fact that they were willing to do that and name names in terms of state actors that were behind this speaks to the seriousness that federal officials are attaching to this intrusion on our elections.
Well, if it is Russia, obviously a lot of people in the Democratic primary are concerned with Secretary Clinton was her record with, Iraq, military intervention. So a lot of people are looking at this drumbeat and feeling like this is escalating tensions by continuing to kind of talk about Russia and, we have to go after Putin. And now the Obama administration talking about possible cyber response. Should people be worried that, if she becomes president, this escalation and talk about Russia is going to end up in another war?
No, I don't think so. I think that's a big leap in logic to stand up to Russia when it is threatening our Eastern European allies, when it is unlawfully annexing the Crimea, when it is engaging in these acts of aggression and intrusion in our free and fair elections here in the United States. To stand up to that and say that there should be appropriate response from the U.S. government to signal that we're not going to abide that is appropriate, and that is not the same as signaling some kind of call to war against Russia. I think that the troubling thing here is that in spite of all these acts of aggression by Putin, Donald Trump continues to make apologies for Russia, continues to mouth pro-Putin talking points with respect to his annexation of the Crimea and his position on NATO, suggesting that we wouldn't stand by our Eastern European allies if Vladimir Putin continues to show aggression westward into some of those other Baltic states that live under constant threat of Russia. And so I think that we have been emphasizing, and you even heard President Obama himself a couple of days ago emphasize the irony of the Republican Party, which for years tried to cast President Obama as soft on Russia, now sort of defending a nominee in Donald Trump who is actively coddling the Kremlin.
But it just sounds you have an outside security company saying this is similar patterns to Russia, and then government officials saying it. It doesn't really sound like there's a preponderance of evidence that Russia is behind all these leaks.
Oh, I mean, it is a startling statement for the U.S. government to explicitly name Russia, and you don't do that unless the evidence is unassailable.
The U.S. government said there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq.
Look, you could never expect in a situation like this that the U.S. government is going to divulge its sources and methods for explaining how it is so confident that the Russians are behind this. But I think that is a statement that all Americans can take at face value.
And last question, I don't really want to get into like one specific email, but in general, a lot of people, including me actually, look at this and it seems like her positions were kind of changing behind the scenes as the campaign went, and there was kind of the campaign working to make that work for the broader public. Should people feel like the public positions, the private positions? How is she going to credibly say, "This, I'm a progressive who gets things done," but a lot of these positions changed behind closed doors in these emails?
No, I think that you have to judge her by the positions that she's staked out in this campaign, and she's been very consistent in upholding those positions, even much longer after the primary concluded. Throughout this general election campaign, there may have been skeptics that suggested or supposed that maybe she would soft pedal her emphasis on some of these issues like gun safety or criminal justice reform in a general election in some dash to appeal to moderate voters, and that hasn't happened. She's been pretty full-throated in talking about these same issues, talking about how she wants to crack down on big Wall Street banks, talking about what she wants to do on gun safety, even now that we're in a general election. And so I think, if nothing else, that should be a sign of reassurance for people that her heart is in it in terms of fighting for these progressive causes that she's outlined in this campaign.
Thanks.
Okay,
Good luck.
thanks. Yep.